Moving on to Bilal Phillips. Since these were all names that have been raised, what is the evidence against Bilal Phillips? What is the evidence against this one? What is the evidence against Green Lane? So we'll mention some of these issues. Bilal Phillips, we had a number of issues with him. And as I mentioned in one of the earlier parts, I sat with him in Medina and advised him in relation to some of these issues. From the issues that we have with Bilal Phillips, is Bilal Phillips mentioning in a lecture that he gave, and I quote, that I do not dissociate myself from Jama'at Tabligh. And this is an issue in his claim that he gives subtle dawa to the innovators. He said, I do not disassociate myself from the Tablighi brothers. I will discuss with them, and I give lectures to them on rare occasions when they may invite me, and always my lectures will call subtly to the way of the Salaf. Furthermore, I have spoken spoken about the bid'ah in Tabligh in numerous lectures. So the issue is not my supposed disassociation from Salafis, but my unwillingness to disassociate totally from people who are not on the manhaj. Yani, his unwillingness to disassociate from the people of innovation. The Salaf did it, but he sees himself better and wiser than they are. My rejection of their bid'ah and errors is not enough. And so the issue then, this issue was put, this exact passage was put to Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabari, and Sheikh responded with a clear statement, and within that statement he mentioned, this person has said that he calls the Tabligh subtly, and I understand from this that he doesn't criticize their methodology, and that he does not criticize their deviants, and that Tawheed is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah only, which is one of their main issues, and that they hold that Tawheed is only Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, and this is what they give the meaning of La ilaha illallah as, and this is not what the Salaf were upon. That is, this affair of subtly giving them da'wah, subtly working on them, subtly dropping subtle hints. This was not the way of the Salaf, as our Shaykh mentions. This was not what the Salaf were upon. Rather, the Salaf used to warn against innovations, and they would uncover its evil. So how is this call that is subtle? Explain it. The Tablighi's and other than them, if the true methodology is not shown, and the futile methodologies are not uncovered, then they will not disagree and warn against him. And this is the politics of getting closer to them, drawing closer, and this is what they want, and this is exactly what they want. They want you to lecture for them, to cooperate with them, and let it be seen that we're cooperating. And subhanallah, here is one who has this academic prowess and has such and such qualification. He works with us, and you guys who are just the rabble among the people of Sunnah and Salafiyah, you guys don't work with us because you're so uncouth and unsophisticated, aren't you? In any case, ikhwan, this was not the way of the Salaf of this ummah. Salaf of this ummah, ayyuhal ikhwa, they had a clear stance and know for a certainty that if you were giving the necessary da'wah that you should be giving to them, then it is highly unlikely that you'll be called back for a second lecture, much less a lecture series. And that is the nature of organized bid'ah. Organized bid'ah, it is rare that you'll change a whole organization. Yes, you may save afrad and individuals from them, but it is rare, highly rare, that you will change the whole organization. Another issue related to Bilal Phillips is the statement that he had, and he has made in one of his writings, or in actuality in an email that he sent to an individual. And that is that he said, at any rate, Muhammad Qutb's book, Islam, the Misunderstood Religion, has useful information for people coming to Islam from a political background. Mawdudi's book, Towards Understanding Islam, so far Muhammad Qutb, second in Mawdudi. His book, Towards Understanding Islam, is useful for da'wah, regardless of his errors. This attitude of rejecting everything from a scholar due to some errors is extreme and rejected by the leading scholars of the Salaf and the Khalaf. Like who? Billahi alaykum. Mithil man. Like who? Who rejects this affair of the rejection or having a problem with rejecting Ahlul Bid'ah. And here, ikhwan, we must make a clear difference between the person of Sunnah that makes a mistake, in which case, yes, the Salaf do not have that position. If a person of Sunnah makes a mistake, then he's a person of Sunnah as long as it is a mistake and he rectifies his error and he corrects his error. That is in relation to the person of Sunnah who makes a mistake. But the one who was never and has never been a person of Sunnah, like Muhammad Qutb or like Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, individuals who are people of innovation from the asl, from the origin, then it is said that we benefit from them. The person of Sunnah who falls into bid'ah and does not correct his bid'ah and thus is ascribed to a bid'ah after being upon the Sunnah, his books are not benefited from and are not taken from. So the person who has never been upon the Sunnah, how then, ayyuha al-ikhwa, is it said that one should benefit from his books? And he mentions Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi and Muhammad Qutb. When were they upon the Sunnah for us to say that this is a person who is known to have benefit that we can take from? And then his statement, this attitude of rejecting everything from a scholar due to some error, is extreme, mashallah, and rejected by leading scholars of the Salaf and the Khalaf. Bring a few, quote a few of them, handful of scholars of the Salaf and the Khalaf that rejected this extreme view of rejecting from the people of innovation. Another issue that we have with Bilal Phillips, I mean, so far, again, we ask, were they correct? Was he correct? Or were we correct? Was our stance correct? Or should we have remained clinging to him, pushing and promoting him, aiding and abetting his da'wah? Another issue, he mentions in the Fundamentals of Tawheed, a very probably his most popular book. Here we see him calling to this revolutionary methodology and this revolutionary khariji manhaj of speaking out against the rulers and making khuruj against the leaders. He mentions divine law has to be reintroduced into many so-called Muslim countries. Yani so-called Muslim countries. So what are we saying there, Ya Bilal? That they are not Muslim countries? Many so-called Muslim countries where governments now rule according to imported capitalist or communist constitutions, and Islamic law is either totally extinct or relegated to a few areas of minor importance. Likewise, Muslim countries where Islamic laws is on the books, but secular laws are in force, have also to be brought in line with the Sharia as it pertains to all aspects of life. Then he mentions the acceptance of non-Islamic rule in places of Sharia in Muslim lands is shirk and an act of kufr. Those in a position to change it must do so, while those unable to do so must speak out against the rule of kufr. Again, must speak out against the rule of kufr and call for the implementation of the Sharia. If even this becomes impossible, un-Islamic governments must sincerely be hated and despised for the pleasure of Allah. So were we correct? Or was he correct? Another issue with Bilal Phillips, his claim and his ta'wil and his interpretation of a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ made the affair clear with in relation to the rising of the sun from the west. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentions, and I quote, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that when three things appear, faith will not benefit anyone who has not previously believed or has not derived any good from his faith: the rising of the sun from its place of setting. Then in the footnote he states, that is, the rising in the west, which probably refers to a time when Earth will begin to rotate in the opposite direction, causing the sun to appear to rise in the west instead of the east. MashaAllah. When the Prophet ﷺ, he said that indeed the sun, it rises from the east and then it sets in the west and heads or seeks the throne of Allah Azza wa Jalla and makes sajda in front of the throne. كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. And then it seeks permission to rise in the morning. Or it seeks permission to rise again, and then permission is granted to it. But a day will come when it will seek permission, and permission will not be granted to it, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will say, go back from where you came. And that is the day that it will rise in the west. And so all of these false interpretations, whether the sun rising in the west, meaning that Islam will rise in the Western countries, batil, falsehood, or this type of interpretation that the sun will be, or the earth will begin to rotate in the opposite direction, batil, ikhwan. This is false, and this is the type of interpretation, ta'wil, that is not to be expected from the people of knowledge of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, his raising of the people of innovation, similar to what we find in Green Lane, and similar to what we find with many other callers who are upon this similar method and approach towards dealing with the people of innovation. He mentions, and in this we have his statement concerning Hassan al-Banna. He said other scholars in the 20th century, such as Hassan al-Banna, the founder of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun movement, Sayyid Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, the founder of Jama'ah Islami movement, and more recently the great scholar of hadith in our time, Nasiruddin al-Albani, have picked up the banner of Islamic revival and have called for the unification of the madhabs. And that is in his book The Evolution of Fiqh, page 114. And he throws Sheikh al-Albani in there as though he's in any way, shape or form near to them. And so here again we have the praise of Al-Ikhwan and the founder of Ikhwan, the praise of Jama'ah Islami and its founder Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi. All of these statements, Ayyuha al-Ikhwa, Billahi alaykum, whose position is correct? Our position or this one? More praise of the people of innovation. Another quote, he mentions, one who studies the biography of Imam al-Banna will find that Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed him, and this incidentally is him translating the statement of Ahmad al-Afghani. But he mentions, anyway, this passage mentions one who studies the biography of Imam al-Banna, that is Hassan al-Banna, will find that Allah Azza wa Jal blessed him with such clarity of understanding that he was able to bring together conflicting members of the four schools of thought, the Salafis and the Sufis in the melting pot of pure Islam. About this passage, he mentions a footnote. Hassan al-Banna was a Muslim scholar who founded the Ikhwan al-Muslimin Islamic movement in the late 20s in Egypt. This movement soon spread to the Sudan, North Africa, Jordan and Syria, and aspired to re-establish Islamic rule in Muslim countries. It was forced underground in most of these countries in the 50s, 60s and 70s, only to re-emerge in different forms and under different names. It continues to play a leading role in educating and organizing the Muslim masses in many parts of the world, as well as organizing Muslim students during their studies in the West. And that, of course, is very true. And that is the point that we've been trying to make to our brothers and sisters, that this affair of the influence of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and their da'wah and their approach to understanding the deen has, in essence, seeped into almost every Western community, to the extent that they see that that is true Islam. And when the Sunnah is brought to them, they seek to be extreme. Why? Because they are acquainted with negligence. In any case, look at and listen to the statement of Bilal Phillips. Hassan al-Banna was a Muslim scholar who founded Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and it spread in such and such region, and no disparaging statement, no dispraise of the organization and the approach of the organization. He likewise says Abu al-A'la al-Mawdudi, this great Pakistani scholar and leader who wrote an introduction. Then in the footnote he states Abu al-A'la translated some books from Arabic to English, and then wrote his first Al-Jihad fil Islam. From this point he became a prolific writer and involved himself. All of this is praise of Ahlul Bid'ati wal Dalala. All of this is praise, ikhwan, of the people of innovation. Similarly, his position in relation to the existence of various groups of innovation and deviation, and him disliking the differentiation between them and Salafiyah in a tape titled Shiite Islam, which is supposed to be a refutation of the Shiites and their kufr belief. On the second side of the tape, a man asked who was or was Prophet Ibrahim a Sunni, and what about such a person, what should he be named? And so the response of Bilal Phillips was, actually, you come late, and in the very beginning of the lecture I explained that the bottom line is about Muslim and non-Muslim, and this is why I clarified that there is no such thing as Shiite Islam and Sunni Islam. There is just Islam and non-Islam. That's it. That's all it is. And I explained that at length, that this is a concept that is being promoted by Orientalists and others to create this delusion in our minds that there are different kinds of Islam. So there's just one Islam then, one big melting pot. Anyway, Orientalists are the ones that have created it to create this delusion in our minds that there are different kinds of Islam. But the fact of the matter is that what was revealed to Adam والسلام, through all the prophets to Muhammad ﷺ, this is Islam, and there is just one Islam, nothing else, and we are Muslims. And I myself, I don't like these titles of Ikhwani or Salafi and all. People calling themselves, labeling themselves in such a way as to create divisions among Muslimun. We are Muslims first and last, Alhamdulillah. Now this is actual qawl, his actual statement. And so again, we have to ask the question, is he correct in this, or were we correct? Another issue in relation to the Qutbi sect and their evil, Qutbiyya, followers of Sayyid Qutb, he attributes or mentions the fact that these differences, they're minor differences, and they're just like the differences that occur among the companions. He said that the differences among these scholars are like the differences between the Sahaba. Allahu Akbar. If we can accept them, which we have to, then we must accept these. And of course, Ikhwan, again, this is an issue that our scholars have spoken against, that is this claim that the companions had differences in Aqidah. Yes, they may have differed on some of the furu' and some of the subsidiary issues of the deen related to actions and what have you, but in relation to the issue of the fundamentals of the deen, the usul of the deen, the Aqidah and what have you, then they didn't differ in issues of usul. But here he claims that the difference between the likes of in particular, he mentioned here, this was in response to the affair of Safar and Salman, Safar al-Hawali and Salman al-Awda. Those were imprisoned for their Khariji statements, and the fatwa for their imprisonment was issued by Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz. He was asked about what is the difference between them and the rest of the scholars, and he said the difference between these scholars are like the differences between the Sahaba. So what then would you say about Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, who had them imprisoned? So were we correct, or were they correct? Bilal Phillips again. And one of the issues that we have in relation to an individual, that is Imran Hussein, well-known deviant in Trinidad. He mentions concerning, and this individual is well known for his various ta'wilat and his various statements of batil and falsehood, explaining away the sunnah, making ta'wil of the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in relation to the latter days, or the ahadith in relation to the signs of the hour and so on. Well known, and the people and the brothers on the sunnah in Trinidad know him well. But what is it that he mentions concerning him? He says Sheikh Imran Hussein. Sheikh Imran Nazar Hussain was a former diplomat of Trinidad and Tobago. He is presently the Imam of Masjid Dar al-Quran in Long Island, New York. He studied Islam under the guidance of the outstanding Islamic scholar and Sufi Sheikh Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari at the Institute of Islamic Studies in Pakistan. And he continues to praise him. He also studied philosophy in the University of Karachi and international relations and. All of this again, this type of praise and this revering the people of innovation and bid'ah and Sufiya. Who is most correct in relation to these stances? Do we accept this or do we stand against this?